Twitter. This is an article from Fox News. Fox News, baby. Now I feel like my dad because I'm reading a Fox News article in the morning. He always sends me Fox News articles at 11 o'clock in the morning, and he'll show me the latest world happenings through the eyes of Tucker Carlson. So I typed in Ghislaine Maxwell account suspended from Twitter, and Fox News was the first one that popped up. So let's get right into it. So foxnews.com, the title is Twitter suspends an account providing Ghislaine Maxwell trial updates. Twitter claimed that the account violated rules against platform manipulation and spam. So, it reads, a Twitter account that closely monitored the trial of former Jeffrey Epstein partner Ghislaine Maxwell was suspended on Wednesday after the tech company claimed that the profile was violating rules against platform manipulation and spam. The Maxwell Trial Tracker, which was at Trial Tracker account, I believe it's the same thing on Instagram. Let me just double check so I can give you guys that in case I forget to link it. All right, so Maxwell Trial Tracker. Yeah, it's Trial Tracker on Instagram at Trial Tracker. So same thing. If you guys want to follow it on Instagram, it's still there. So the Maxwell Tracker at Trial Tracker, which has only been active for 2 weeks, had roughly 525,000 followers at the time of its suspension. Twitter did not immediately respond to Fox News Digital for comment. Now, this is the owner of the account, the holder of the account. He says, I woke up this morning and the at Trial Tracker account on Twitter was suspended. All the other accounts that I have made in the past were also suspended. This was the only note that I received, said the account holder of the Substack page, the Free Press Report. And here's an attachment. He says, Twitter sent him a message saying that he violated the rules of platform manipulation and spam. That's the bold heading. And then the message goes on to say, from Twitter, it says, you may not use Twitter services in a manner intended to artificially amplify or suppress information or engage in behavior that manipulates or disrupts people's experience on Twitter. So you can't manipulate or disrupt people's experience on the platform of Twitter. Which, I mean, if you've been on Twitter, 80% of the tweets are people trying to disrupt or manipulate your experience. If you have a Twitter account, and I do myself, I'm not as active on it, but I use it now more to kind of observe, get snapshots of what's going on, see what's trending, ideas for podcasts, do research on guests, things like that. Watch the world burning down is also another fun activity you can do on Twitter. You can just take a front row seat to the way that the world is burning to an absolute crisp, and then you walk outside and you go, oh, it's actually not that bad. So that's something fun to do on Twitter. So every single tweet, every person is someone trying to disrupt your experience by being on Twitter. That's the idea. You send out tweets and you try to get people to pay attention to you. You are taking the experience that that person has of being on the platform, of reading through their newsfeed, and you say, okay, what does it take I can have on this to disrupt that person's stream? Because that is the idea behind every single post. You want to post something on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, whatever, that's going to cause you to stop and watch. You want to disrupt the person's feed and say something like, hey, black people, whatever, Ghislaine Maxwell. And that's why, it's an entirely separate discussion, But that's why Twitter has become so toxic, because the idea of Twitter is to manipulate people's experience and disrupt people's experience, that you have to say the divisive thing to get people to stop. You can't just have a normal take. You have to say something overwhelmingly reactionary, whether it's positive or negative, so that people love you or hate you and that it gets retweets. That's the idea. We live in a society of engagement. And so I find it hilarious and hypocritical that Twitter is going against this guy and suspending this guy for doing the very thing that is innate to the platform, which is manipulating an experience, disrupting experience through the post. That is their entire business model, is to have people get on Twitter, and you organize your feed in a way, you can curate your feed, and then people are competing to say, hey, how can I get into your experience today? How can I do this? How can I do that? And then Twitter runs ads on that, and then that's the business model of social media. It's an engagement. And then the message from Twitter goes on to say, note that if you attempt to evade a permanent suspension by creating new accounts, we will suspend your new accounts. If you wish to appeal the suspension, please contact our support team. Then it goes on to say, the Substack post indicated that according to Twitter rules, the Maxwell trial tracker account was artificially amplifying information. The Free Press report asserted that the Twitter's account's engagement was organic and denied any form of outside amplification. The post also said that they had reached out to the tech company to appeal the suspension. Again, everything on Twitter is artificially amplified. Most of Twitter is just blue check marks, journalists, actors, a lot of liberal people. That's what Twitter is. If you look at the numbers, it's mostly, it's overwhelmingly censored towards the liberal side. It's blue check marks jerking each other off. That's what Twitter is. Everything on Twitter is artificially amplified by the mechanism of Twitter. It's that if you have a certain point of view, and those other people who share point of views that are also powerful on Twitter retweet you and shout you out, they will amplify artificially each other's takes. And it is artificial because Twitter is not representative of the general population. The people that you find getting retweeted the most on Twitter are not the normal takes. And again, it's overwhelmingly liberal. You don't see a lot of conservative takes going viral on Twitter. There are a few, but it's certainly not even in terms of censorship. And it's ironic because everything is artificially amplified on Twitter. And the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, this whole Jeffrey Epstein situation, is the one thing right now that everyone is organically interested in. Now that the Kyle Rittenhouse trial is over, and people were very interested in what was happening to Kyle Rittenhouse on both sides. People wanted to see him get off, which he eventually did, and other people wanted to see him burn. And it was a very divisive period on Twitter. And now that's over, and we have something where everyone is organically interested on the same side. Everyone wants to see this woman go away because of her involvement with Jeffrey Epstein and child sex trafficking and all the fucked up shit that she was a part of and either saw happening or orchestrated to happen. And finally we have one thing where everyone's like, yeah, put this fucking, pedophile liaison in jail organically. You don't need to artificially amplify this. This guy was just simply sharing facts from the trial. And Twitter shuts it down, calling it the exact opposite, calling it artificial amplification, which it's not. And I don't get it. I'm very confused, and it's just ironic that the entire this is the one thing we can all come together on, and Twitter's getting rid of this. There's also an article from earlier this year about Twitter's, like Twitter has a pattern of this with protecting child pornography, which is weird because Ghislaine Maxwell, however you say it, she was involved in underage sex with women, with girls, and giving those girls to older men in power. And so there's an aspect of underage child sex there. And then back in January of 2021, an article on New York Post where Twitter refused to remove child porn because it didn't violate policies. And there's actually a lawsuit. And this goes on to read that Twitter refused to take down widely shared pornographic images and videos of teenage sex trafficking victims because an investigation, quote unquote, didn't find a violation of the company's policies, a scathing lawsuit alleges. The federal suit, filed Wednesday by the victim and his mother in the Northern District of California, alleges Twitter made money off the clips, which showed a 13-year-old engaged in sex acts and are a form of child sexual abuse material or child porn, the suit states. The teen, who is now 17 and lives in Florida, is identified only as John Doe and was between 13 and 14 years old when sex traffickers posing as a 16-year-old female classmate started chatting with him on Snapchat. Doe and the traffickers allegedly exchanged nude photos before the conversation turned to blackmail. If the teen did not share more sexually graphic photos and videos, the explicit material he'd already sent would be shared with his parents, coaches, and pastor. So I don't know what's going on at Twitter. This is not the first time that they've allowed, that they've been involved with some sort of child sex situation. Here, where they're directing traffic away from an alleged child sex trafficker, Ghislaine Maxwell, by suspending the account that's literally just tracking what's going on in the trial. They're not in opinion. This is not an opinion column. This is not a guy trying to be inflammatory. He's simply, like, you can go check it out on Instagram, at Child Tracker, and this guy is posting what's happening every day. He's giving recaps. He's giving details about testimony, just different things that are coming up with evidence, and nothing is left up to opinion. He's just saying this is what's happening. It's the opposite of artificial amplification. So Twitter has done that. They're directing traffic away from a alleged child sex trafficker, and then they're allowing child porn to stay up on Twitter. And I had this dark thought where I'm like, dude, this is, if there was a pedo, if there was a pedophile running Twitter, if there was a pedophile that was the CEO of Twitter, this is exactly how he would run the company, or she, whoever it was. Some parent calls the CEO and says, you know, like, I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned about these images of children. They're on Twitter. John, we need to take these images down. We need to take these videos down. They're inappropriate of children, and we cannot have these images being shared on the internet. And John, the CEO of Twitter, is just like listening to the parent and just like fucking jerking off to the images on Twitter and being like, yeah, this is such a bad problem. We definitely need to get rid of this. You know, it's something, it should never be on Twitter in the first place. And also, another thing, if you're the CEO of Twitter and someone brings to your attention the fact that there are child sex images on your website, what kind of person do you have to be for the first thought in your head to be, okay, well, yeah, I mean, it is child porn, but let's see if there's some technicality or something in the fine print of our user agreement where we can keep these up there. I mean, I know it's wrong, but like, let's refer to the rules. Let's see if there's something. Let's call lawyers. Look, I know it's child porn. I know it's wrong, but let's see if we can leave it up there on a technicality. I'm not saying we're gonna leave it up. I'm not saying it's gonna stay up there. Let's just check the rule book though. Like what kind of person do you have to be to leave child porn up on your website knowingly? It's not like these images were just buried on Twitter and they were changing the captions and hashtags. This is a lawsuit ongoing where the images were left up there, and now you have a trial that everyone is interested in, that is that very may well lead to an alleged child sex trafficker being put behind bars. And the CEO of Twitter is like, how can we take the heat off this bitch? How can we take the heat off Ghislaine? How can we help this woman out? I know she was helping presidents and princes and powerful people fuck kids in the ass, but like, let's just think for a second here. Let's just think, what should we Ghislaine. What can we do to protect this woman? And it's like, I'm not saying that the CEO of Twitter is a pedophile, but like, what would you do if you were a pedophile and you wanted and you were making allegations, or you were making rules for Twitter? You would want the pornography to stay up there, and you would direct traffic away from people who were committing child sex crimes, because that's something you want available. Just food for thought. I don't know. I'm just putting together things in my mind. I'm a dumb person that reads articles, and my creative net starts casting things together. So it's like, what kind of person is this new CEO? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's a good faith reason for all of this. Maybe Twitter is keeping up child porn and directing traffic away from an alleged child sex trafficker because they want Ghislaine Maxwell to get on Twitter like O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson was a huge boost for Twitter. He was, found quote unquote not guilty of killing his ex-wife and the other guy who she was sleeping with, and there was the entire saga that I'm not going to go through right now. But O.J. Simpson, fucking probably murdered people, and he came back on Twitter. And he's killing it on Twitter. He posts about things and people loved it. People followed him. And it was a huge boost, I'm sure, for the Twitter platform base. Because anytime someone gets a lot of followers on Twitter, people join Twitter. People follow them to figure it out. So maybe Twitter's hoping like, okay, if Ghislaine's not guilty, we're going to give her a launch party like O.J. Simpson. We're gonna get this bitch on Twitter, and we're going to get her some followers. And we're just going to kind of like the picture of Ghislaine Maxwell she posted in front of a Chipotle or Arby's or whatever, that weird poster, the weird picture she posted a year ago of her just reading a book. They're going to have a day in the life of Ghislaine Maxwell. She'll go golfing and she'll post a selfie on hole 9, and then she'll meet up and go golf in a twosome with O.J. Simpson.